Hello everyone, today is August 28, 2024. This is the weekly working group serving meeting. This meeting will be recorded automatically and uploaded to YouTube afterwards. And we are following the CNCF Code of Conduct. As usual, we'll go through the workstream updates. The first one is on orchestration workstream, and I'll provide a quick update. So for serving catalog, my colleague Philippi has added some examples for case of serving runtimes. So feel free to take a look and provide your comments. And the Llama 3 VRM example has also been merged. Jason, I don't know if you want to add additional comments or do you want to save that to open topics?
Additional comment is it's just meant to be an example for adding model support for an existing model server. Hopefully soon I will be able to post another model server support and keep opening issues for support for other model server frameworks and models. And then, yeah, we can wait for the discussion.
Sounds good. That's it for orchestration, right? Anyone else wants to add? Okay. Oh, Clayton, go ahead.
I was going to suggest, I was actually just thinking about this, as we have more sub projects, we might want to have work stream updates and sub project updates. So like the work stream is coordination, and then sub projects are like generating the specifics of like actually doing stuff. And then as we get more and more sub projects, then that'll kind of become like, we'll start moving into triage mode. Does it make sense to everybody? Because like instance gateway and serving catalog are both kind of sub projects at this point. We haven't quite formally called them that yet.
Yep. Sounds good. Yeah. All right. So for these open topics that are related to subject updates, should we do that now or after workstream updates?
I feel like it would make sense to move the updates parts, and then if there were open questions or topics, then we'd go into open topics and discuss it, just as a suggestion. Like both Jason and Kellen's comments probably could just fold into sub-project updates. And then if we need more time on the discussion, then we would say we're going to have it discussed. So like, yeah, I don't think the actual 15 minutes that Jason's suggesting would go under sub-project updates. We'd kind of want to burn through those.
Okay. Sounds good. So let's move on for DIA. Any updates?
Nothing really. It's been pretty quiet, but we're starting to look at what we want to do in 132. And right now, the two highest priority caps identified so far, at least, I mean, we haven't had a consensus or anything, but among a few of us, at least, we think partitionable devices, which allows us to do dynamic MIG, and what we call our optionality or one of. So it allows you to in a workload spec say, I am willing to take one of this GPU or two of this GPU or four of this other GPU in a priority order. Those are probably the two, other than getting the core base DRA to beta. Those are the two enhancements that we would want to layer on top from a, those would be new alpha caps, new features on top of it. Yeah, Clayton.
I was gonna say, like, on the MIG, I know I've heard people talk about that for serving workloads. Like, I think there is some interest there. It's maybe not like classic LLM, but it does come up in serving. Is that would it make sense for that to be a work stream under DRA that we just like redirect folks to go pay attention to that? Or is it like a feed requirements thing? Like, I'm kind of thinking about what worked last release for feeding requirements and what didn't work. Like, should we just as a working group, should we just try to get people to go join in and periodically update on those?
So we'd love more requirements. I mean, we haven't gotten tons of requirements from this group. The piece that I mean, I think that I don't think we should try to force fit it. Like let's look at the updates. Like if the main projects coming out of this group are in the orchestration layer, like let's let those dictate what they want from the lower layer. Like we have these things we're doing. I want the team here to track it and know what we're doing, so that if you hear something, you're like, oh, that's not going to work for me, or oh, that's really useful, you can come and participate. You know,
example might be the example might be like when someone's like, okay, you know, we've got and Jan has this in his problem exploration. So like, you know, one of the problems is autoscaling for generative AI workloads is hard. And so then like a sub problem of that is accelerators don't quite fit for workloads. So the MIG one obviously is an enabler for that, because you can use MIG to get partitions that more closely match the size.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, the serving catalog, you know, if you wanted to use MIG, would we say like, oh, you know, on serving catalog, you know, go find the people in this working group who have the sub MIG use case and say, get a serving catalog example of what you, like someone try to sit down and write, like, how would I use the MIG proposal to actually achieve leveraging MIG in a serving workload? Like, you know,
yes.
I'm just like making up some stuff right now for the sake of the discussion, but like HPA, I want to use a MIG. What does it actually look like? Oh no, I don't actually want that. I want to, you know, I want to do X or Y. So it kind of like feels like it's more just trying to get the people to have some examples, and what thread do we draw so that we can actually track it? Do we track it in DR8 or do we track it here?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think we need to track it jointly. I mean, like we need to. I see what you're saying. I would love if we could track here the examples and use cases. I mean, you'd feed them to us, but like somebody from this group needs to drive. I don't know enough about serving workloads and how to specify them to write that myself. I mean, I could research it and find out, but somebody who's already got that knowledge is going to do a better job of it. And so I would love for that person to reach out to me or to Patrick or to Kevin, and we could have those kind of discussions around things like MIG, around all the features. But if there's other features too, the one I know that we've started doing, like one thing I'd like to look at is what we've already done and how it like fits with like rail aligned architectures that NVIDIA publishes. Like that gets into the multi-host, right? So there are other touch points like across all of these work streams that I think, you know, being the lower level API will have. So I don't know the answer to your question, but I think it would be useful to track it in this group with the real and sort of end users.
Yeah, this is more like a process. Trying like, I've heard it. I don't know who else has heard it. Would we just be like, okay, call for? Does anybody in this working group care? And if no one cares, you know, just redirect them. Just say like, hey, okay, we're just not going to track it. On the other hand, if we should like the working group, as we have some of these workstream discussions, maybe the folks spot something. So it maybe sounds like we're in the awareness phase, and then we need to find somebody who actually cares enough to drive this themselves because they've got a user or a problem.
Yeah, well, we're building this based on, right, kind of bubbling from the bottom up, and to have the top down view would be super, like we're talking to vendors, right? And it's like vendors, and they're like, wow, we have this feature, let's make it available. Like that's one approach, but you know, and obviously the vendors are talking to their customers, right? So there is some top down going there, but it would be nice to get it out of this group too. So what you wrote there, like find a representative maybe for each of the other work streams that can work closely with DRA, with the work group devices group, to make sure that what we're building meets the needs of those work streams. So in particular, orchestration, autoscaling, multi-host, all should have requirements for DRA.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, John. Okay, auto scaling. Any updates? Okay. No updates for multi-host either.
Yes, no updates since last week.
Okay. And we'll do the project update in future meetings.
I have a question.
Yeah.
To Jashin. Are you following on VLM progress on supporting disaggregated serving? I'm assuming this is under multi-host in general.
Yes. I think that one is not still not ready. So I talked with the author offline. I think the KV cache transfer like performance and the edge cases are kind of tricky. But I think I'll try to get some like more details, like the estimated deadlines by next week. And at the same time, I think there's already like the serve public versions, right? That's not a part of that's a separate repo, not a PR to the against the VLM repo. So we'll check with them the stability of that repo first, just in case people want to give it a try. Yeah. So
Okay.
I can give more updates next week. Yeah.
Do you know if like VLM, like are you at all involved in VLM planning as well? Like I think the existing PR that's open, it's not like fully disaggregated serving. It's just one feature, which is the KV cache transfer, and I'm assuming it is limited, right? Like it's just 1-to-1.
Yes, that's a different PR actually. Last time we talked about that PR, that was the design for the KV transfer instead of the original like ideas from the third paper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a different PR. So there will be a new PR, and I'm not involved in the VLM like roadmap planning, but I talk with the like the maintainers, and their attitude on the disaggregate serving is they think that's mainly working for those large scaled clusters, and it needs to I mean the cluster needs to be better equipped to fully utilize the features. Otherwise, you probably sacrifice the like the performance due to the network or other like setups. So I think their attitude on that feature is I think I think the priority is not that high. So that's I think the major reason this PR takes a long time to get merged into the upstream.
Okay.
And that's actually interesting because I would say like what we're trying to do with the elements in this gateway is drive larger clusters and demand.
Mm-hmm.
So like there is an intersection point kind of between our proposal here and how would we partner? Like how would working group serving and VLM, would we like prioritize the project collaboration? Like, and then what would we need to do above and beyond that to drive some of that work? Because I kind of like reading in between the lines from Abdullah's comment, like disaggregation should work better the bigger the cluster gets and the more diversity you have in use cases. But then if you're also multiplexing use cases on top of disaggregation, it becomes even more valuable because disaggregation benefits from scale. So like that's a little bit of that thread. I guess I was just trying to see if like there's something we wanted to concretely record us, like elements in this gateway would pursue this with VLM or something.
Yes, I think yeah, that's just like a feature, and from like public sources like the mooncakes. I mean the moonshots like public paper. They publish a lot of like drawbacks of the disaggregations, like the for example, sometimes the preview servers are busy, and when you ship the traffic to the decode servers, and at that time, I think preview has lower GPU usage. They do a lot of work to address those issues. I think those are that's why I think in industry right now, I think I would say some of the consensus is that's only work for like very large inference instances. For example, you have like 24 GPUs, 16 preview workers and 8 GPU decode workers. Like those like that scales for the single instance is I think is not accessible for most of the users. That's why I think that's just one features for I think large scale users. But I think the collaboration with them should be okay because the multiplexing or like heterogeneous those are all like I think more generic to most of the users. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to
think this is good.
understand. Go ahead.
Oh, right, Abdul.
I'm just trying to understand their plans as well. Like in general, like if we have it supported, then basically we can start thinking about like how inference gateway can integrate with that to orchestrate traffic for prefill and decode.
Yeah, if I understand correctly, I think it should be transparent because no matter it's the fixed ratio or pooling solutions, the traffic from prefill to decode workers, that's handled by the engine internally.
Right.
So that means only probably a leader work prefill instance will get the traffic, right? So in that case, the gateway just need to discover that part. That should be okay. Yeah.
Jiaxin, would you mind like linking the paper here? The moonshot paper?
Yeah, sure. I can link the paper there.
Yeah, I have it. I think it's this one. Oh, sorry, not this one.
And it's actually interesting because maybe I'll put this on the problems list, which is there are obstacles on the way to like some of the techniques that you would use benefit the bigger in scale you get, but to get to that scale, you're often going single dimensional for a workload first or something. So I'll mooncake, not moonshot. Maybe like I'll come back to this and like try to sketch out a problem statement for this to go into on your list.
Yeah. Great. Sounds good. Anything else for multi-host? Okay. Yeah, we'll add the mooncake. Okay, so one topic from me is so remember we have a follow-up item from last meeting to organize our work streams and start identifying the problems we want to solve. And so I put together this document. So I gathered all the proposals and relevant documents from this working group and organized them as in different work streams. Hopefully this would serve as a good starting point for us to start identifying the problems we want to solve as a group. And later on, we can start explore and tackle each individual problems. And yeah, thank you, Clayton, for adding the initial problems here. And yeah, for those who are heavily involved for these individual work streams, please help add documents that I may have missed in this list, and also add any problems that you think worth exploring as a group.
And it might be good to even find like people who are interested in driving that problem and kind of like think about owners for the problems. So like, you know, like if LLM instance gateway is trying to address, you know, density, like Kellen, sign Kellen up. Kellen's perfectly happy to help, you know, be the point of immediate contact. And then for like, we actually don't have a problem described right now for the catalog, but we should. The multi-host like leader worker set, like Rupeng or somebody, and then just try to like start getting it so that people look at a problem, ask the question, and there's some structure below it. This is an awesome start.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking maybe we need a template for each of the problems, like the problem statement, potential solution, and any interested parties feel free to comment.
Yeah, I think for community members, if there's any problems, I think since we already create the repo, do you think it's better to collect some like the problems or interest, any techniques in the GitHub, or we use the doc to track it? We probably use the doc to summarize those problems. But I feel it's good to collect those problems from GitHub.
Yeah, so I think we discussed this last time, right? For formal document that requires approvals from the group, I think a GitHub PR to the working group serving repo would be more appropriate. This doc is just meant to like collect the existing documents we have, instead of like us spending a lot of time migrating each one of them to GitHub.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Okay, Jason.
Yeah, I think last time we discussed wanting to be able to have a discussion over feedback in the catalog. One of the comments was that maybe that would be facilitated on comments made to the original PR. I'm not sure if that collected any new comments. So I guess open feedback, or maybe we can talk a little bit about how to facilitate a discussion around this.
I did not get to the review that I wanted to do, so that's on me. I don't know if anybody else had a chance to. Maybe this is actually a good, like, I think it's tough to do it in the big group, but is there a set of like, so my interest is always like, what ideas can we generate, which is more of a brainstorming thing. Like, this is unacceptable. Like, you know, I look at things and I'm like, this is stupid. Why do we do this in Cube? Cube is terrible. And then we try to go ahead and write down the reasons why we did it that way up till now and whether it's tractable. So it's more of a brainstorming on mine. I think that's something, you know, certainly, how do we drive that kind of feedback loop of feeling like there's both like concrete problems we could go tackle, but like how would we generate those ideas? So it's kind of actually going back to John's talk a little bit, which is like, how would we as a group, you know, divvy up like what problems really matter to us? And the stuff I'm thinking about is more like the, you know, going back in like the long history of why we do things and saying like, this is stupid. We're only doing this because this is the way. That's a very like, you know, open-ended search criteria. I think, you know, Jeff, your feedback last time on like things like rolling update is like, these are a concrete problem we have right now. So maybe almost, maybe there's a way to like split the serving catalog feedback. Like if you use this right now, what were the pain points you'd hit? And then maybe like the flip side of it is like, what are the big gaps in Kubernetes that lead to just this kind of mess of config? And which of these problems would someone be like, yeah, I just expected Kube to handle this for me. So maybe like my side of it, we could split off and do separately. the more direct would be like, is anybody using, who's going to go use these YAMLs? Maybe a question, Jason, would be like, how would we get a bunch of people to try out using these, not just to add them, but to be like, yeah, I use this and it sucks. I don't know if one of my guinea pigs is Justin, who I don't know if was able to make it today, but Justin, has been familiarizing himself and trying to get some of that feedback and give it. Just by coming and looking at it, like, yeah, it sucks to go set this up on Cube. How could we do better?
Yeah, we also have to balance, right? We want to make sure we have the right momentum to make sure like the serving catalog is developing fast. So Jason, are there any specific comment from the PR that you'd like to discuss in this meeting?
I don't think any specific comments were added that are worth handling in this meeting. I like what Clayton mentioned and your doc around like problem definitions. I think that's a discussion that we need to have for the serving catalog and add to that doc to summarize it.
One thing we are exploring, I don't know if Jason, we discussed this in this forum, is a simple command line tool to navigate the catalog on top of this. I'm not sure if this is the right forum. But this again goes into the direction of, okay, how do we make it easier in general, like to deploy LLMs on K8s, like and establish some sort of a central repo that can be like a reference, some sort of like a reference. And then we've discovered that like customize in general makes things like it blows up, right? Like it's just like too deep. The tree, right? Like it's hard to navigate. And now we're exploring this command line tool. I don't know how this command line tool will evolve, but initially I think it will be mostly like how to navigate this catalog in an easier way.
Just purely navigation, or are you thinking also going from navigation to deployment?
It's possible. I mean, this is left for feedback. I think, Jason, we need to put together like maybe like your document that you shared with me the other day. We can make it open probably to solicit feedback, how far this command line tool should go. I'm not quite sure about deployment, to be honest. It's mostly at this point is navigation. I find it really hard to navigate the existing catalog. So this tool could make it a bit easier.
And specifically, the reason it's hard is because there's all these choices that are like, the meta problem is effectively there's no one cube YAML that works on, there's too many choices in this space. Maybe then a meta question is, which of those are fundamental choices? Like, is choosing which cloud you deploy accelerators on a fundamental choice? Like DRA is trying to improve that. And then maybe like some of the other fundamental choices are like, or just being able to list the fundamental choices, the essential versus accidental or something would be very useful.
So it sounds like we need thought into what the hierarchy would be of those choices in order to navigate and kind of organize based on that hierarchy. So as you get further down the tree, it's kind of less fundamental choices being made.
Yeah. Ideally, like the tool is going to inform if at all we're going to need like a workload API at the end, right? That and whatever parameters we add to that tool, for example, to pick a specific deployment, right? Those would be the parameters that we would have in a workload API eventually, right? If we ever decide to have something like that. Jason, I think your hands is up. I'm not sure if it's tail or not.
I have some feedbacks on the service catalog. I recently got some feedback from our internal users, and I think that's probably can help drive the service catalog to more like intelligent like direction. So the use case is people have many choices when they develop the models, and there's many parameters, not just the GPU type, but also like the maximum context window for this model to support, and sometimes quantizations, right? Like KV quantizations and model quantizations. It's like a kind of a research problem. And the service catalog right now covers the, I think, cloud providers or GPU types. But to solve users' problems, I think it's better to cover those as well. Just use one example. We recently have a 33B model need to be deployed, and people want to use low end like the V100 L2, L20, and V100 to deploy it, but user doesn't know like which combinations to use. The first thing, it doesn't know which GPU to use, because all of them can deploy the models using different like engine, those configurations. And after they bring those up, they don't know, okay, what's the if they want to optimize the cost, what's the best GPU type. And it also reminds me some like research paper. We have some we did some cost efficient configuration as well. For example, for one service, we like to have a heterogeneous setup for some because some short requests can go to the low end GPUs as well. So I think that's the users like requirements, right? Their requirement is not just to bring up a instance server, but also manage it efficiently. So we need to give users those configuration combinations, and that makes the tool more valuable. Yeah. That's my feedback. Yeah.
I was gonna thinking about what you're saying is the novel thing here that was not true. So for the last 10 years or so, people are platform teams, capacity teams for CPU workloads are mostly making the decisions of like what VM types to go use. And one of the success points of Kubernetes is if you can just boil what you need down to a CPU and memory request, you mostly work. You might need attached storage, but you've got a fairly standard, fairly homogeneous setup. And then once you've got that basic request defined, then a platform team can go match that to hardware. They make the VM sizes, they pick. What's actually happening here is the crossover between the use case authors. Actually, there's fundamental differences between the types of VMs, not like there's more and faster or cheaper. So, different accelerators have fundamentally different properties. And so like the DRA work is like trying to get one level up so that we can go expose all this plethora on all their dimensions. But maybe like the case for specifically this is it's not all the dimensions. It's not cost. Like cost is still mostly a platform team. VM choice is still mostly a platform team, but like the service, the people working on the services, like whatever you want to call them, developers, service team, ML engineers, they still have to make that fundamental trade-off, and it's not CPU and memory. And we don't have a language in Kubernetes other than pick an accelerator type. Is that a one? Like I'm trying to pull out and like think about like the meta problem. Is that one of the meta problems, Zhezhen?
Yeah. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
Okay. Jeff, sorry.
Jeff.
Yeah, and all this discussion, I mean, the mention of cost at all, like just spurred something in me, and I figured I'd share would be like, how are you even monitoring utilization here, right? So like we have these tools that tell us like what's your idle like usage of your cluster, and what's your there's all these like Kubernetes cost analysis tools to tell you how much you're spending and on which services, etc., and how much is underutilized. And with these GPU workloads, they're many times wrong because they're looking at CPU and memory like reservations to determine the cost. And there's some like allocation of the GPU, but then the question is, okay, that pod's running, is it serving traffic or not? And like the CPU might not be getting, the CPU utilization might not be like commensurate with the GPU like actual like compute usage that's happening there. And so you can, yeah, something that came to mind there was just, is that something that we consider here in terms of how do people report on like the utilization level of the resources that of these deployments?
So I think, Joshin, you had like a really good summary of like how different metrics impact auto scaling. It basically covers part of what like you, Jeff, are talking about here. Looking at hardware metrics is, we've basically coming to the consensus that it's not the right proxy. Model server metrics like, KV cache utilization, batch size, queue size are going to give us a much better idea where we are with utilization of specific model server.
Yeah, and I guess like the question is sort of, is there some standardization of metrics that can be gleaned from that, or some, that's the question there.
And we've got the metric server standardization, but if you go more broadly, like I really want to like hone on that. Like we have depended on operating system metrics mostly. We can no longer depend on operating system metrics, and what we're realizing is the hardware metrics are wrong. Like the hardware metrics don't map to the problem space for what you've described in either the workload dimension or on the platform or the workload owner or platform owner dimension. They're like, one of the metrics is, which is like what you might call, we've been using this like term internally, but like scheduler good put. So scheduler good put effectively is a formal way of saying a workload has access to resources and is leveraging them versus the resources are allocated but not being used. So like on a cube cluster, every GPU or every CPU core and like CPUs are hard, but like every meg of memory that's not used, you're paying for it, but it doesn't, it's not actually being used for anything. Like it doesn't provide a buffer. So GPUs and memory kind of fit like that because they're not compressible today, whereas CPU is kind of compressible and burstable workloads. So it's really hard to actually go say burstable workloads. But scheduler good put is like, is Cube doing a good job of only having the allocated resources like packing, auto scaling, et cetera? What we really lack, we're kind of saying like, you can't look at the OS to get the metrics, and you can't look at the hardware to get the metrics for the level above that, which is how efficiently are the workloads using it. But then the question is who does what to improve that? So today, if you want to go improve an inference workload, you have your ML engineers go spend a bunch of time fiddling with code. Sometimes you write a custom CUDA kernel, but then you also have like LLM instance gateways specifically intended to help you get better density. But how would you actually know the delta between what you had before? So like we're missing something above scheduler good put for the different classes. And so this is actually a really good problem. Like we've just teased this out in a way that's really concrete. We have the hardware is bad for auto scaling, but I think there's the meta level, which is we lack effective metrics for platform utilization across the board, and they're likely to be workload dependent. I'll take a note of that, everyone. Sorry, Evan, you were next.
Yeah, I just want to loop back to the user story that we have highlighted that Joshin said, which is selecting hardware is hard for these workloads. I think there's kind of two directions here, right? Which is like, if I have a given workload that I know I want to run, like a certain model, what's the best hardware for that? Or what's an array of a matrix of hardware options and configurations I could choose? But I think the opposite direction that would be useful to me would be, given a set of infrastructure constraints and maybe some sort of like optimization goal, what are the configs that are available to me? Like maybe I don't have as clear strict requirements about what that exact workload is, but I just want to understand like what are the models that I can run on this given infrastructure and still achieve reasonable performance. I kind of ran into this issue this summer where I needed to stand up a number of models for a bunch of different research projects, and they had slightly different needs, and I was kind of looking for one or a handful of models that I could run to meet all of their needs, but on a limited set of infrastructure. And that required quite a bit of research. Right? It was easy enough to kind of narrow down what models I could run just based on memory, but then to figure out, all right, like which one of these are going to perform well enough to meet their requirements was much more challenging. And being able to kind of narrow that lens more quickly so that I'm spending my research time as a user, kind of figuring out that last 20% would be very valuable, as opposed to having to figure out, 0 to 100% all by myself. Over.
I think the tool can help with some of that. We could integrate some static analysis of like, okay, the model size, the GPUs that you have available. Probably we can have the serving catalog integrate some metadata about each GPU type that is targeting, because like the serving catalog is aimed to be like, deployable, and so it's going to target specific clouds, I assume. And so we know like it's a H100, it's L4, etc. We know the model size. We can do some static analysis to decide, okay, like you should use H100. It's probably better here, and so forth. There's also, not sure like if Ashok is on the call. We're planning to open source like an evaluation tool that allows you to draw this like latency throughput curve, right? So that you you can run it, and then you can decide as well, okay, I should choose this or that specific parameter to get the utilization that I'm aiming for. So it's a combination of tools that I think together should move the needle.
I'll try to capture, so I'm capturing at least the cost density thing, and we can develop it. And then the service owners, I'm selecting hardware, I'm capturing as problems. And then was there a third problem in here that we, like the, Jajin, you're mentioning the dynamic nature. Like we have a set of objectives and it's dynamic. So historically in Cube, at the time Cube was designed, while we all kind of thought, yeah, we'd bring nodes in and out, Cube versions 1 through 5 were like, yeah, you have a static set of nodes. And then we spent the last 10 years unpicking that. So like the meta problem there is Cube, Jeff, you brought this up last time, Cube's not really designed for like massive fungibility. And like John brought that up in the DRA discussion, like auto scaling is reactive at the hardware level, but there's no way to schedule based on the theoretical available capacity. So that was in like John's, a few versions out for DRA, not many think we're doing 1, 3, 2. I feel like this is what are the minimum requirements from the workload that would allow costs and all these things to be optimized. You need a way to measure that, but you need the requirements, and they have to be the right requirements. And maybe we're kind of arguing DRA right now is pretty low level. So we need the higher level requirements, the right level of requirements on the workload that accomplish the service owner's goals so that the platform team can optimize to that mechanically today, but in the future, optimize more dynamically because like GPUs changing, like stocks changing, very, very large workloads are not on static clusters in cloud environments. On premise, you have different workloads with different, and you're trying to like reach, you run batch in the evenings when diurnal traffic is lower. That's how the world's worked for the last 30 years. What are we missing that we as a serving group could, set down that path? So that sounds like a third one. Is there another one like the? take that as a no. So that's good. We captured 3 good ones.
All right, we've only got like 10 minutes left. So Jason, are you good with this discussion so far?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay, let's move on. Helen? Helen, are you here to talk about instance gateway progress?
He's on the chat. He's unmuted. His audio may not be coming through.
We've got Rob. Maybe Rob, I want to put you in this. Oh, Karen here.
How about now? Yeah, there we go. Sweet.
Yeah, we gotcha.
Cool. Sorry about that. This should be quick. We're just kind of going over some of the things that's going on with Instance Gateway. We have the repo approved. It's just awaiting creation. So kind of tied to that, we do have some high level ideas of how we think the API might look. Would love to discuss with the community. Thinking we can wait until the repo is created, post some of that there, and we can either discuss within the repo, or if we want to have a first meeting to kick it off, and then we can have meetings ad hoc after that. Totally open to either option. And then as far as the proposal is concerned, I haven't gotten much feedback, so that makes me think it's generally accepted, minus the location. So we can move that to the different working group serving repo if we need to. But yeah, just some general logistics things here. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I believe people have already provided feedback on the Google Docs. So
yeah,
I assume it looks good, and we're just moving the repo, the proposal to the repo. And regarding the repo creation, I did tag Rob. Seems like he's on it, so we should be able to get the repo soon.
To Abdullah's question, I think we should call it LLM Instance Gateway for now, because Inference Gateway is not currently, like general inference is not in the thing, and it is not about the general LLM gateway. But I think we should discuss that in the proposal and say if we have to rename the repo in a week, let's have a debate about that in the repo, and then we can change the repo. And GitHub's good at renaming repos, although I don't know if our infrastructure in Kubernetes 6 can actually deal with it or not.
Yeah, agreed. I think instance implies the composability with other high-level gateways, which is totally our intent.
Yeah, we had that discussion in a separate place where we were saying we don't want us, like Dan's doc represents LLM gateway, and we're trying to create something that's distinct, and calling it LLM inference gateway is more distinct. Instance, I think, just when we chat with people, instance was slightly more preferred, but I'm sure we can come up with a better name if we spend more time on it.
All right, we'll go with the exist name and rename later if needed. Okay, Clayton.
Yeah, this was just so in talking with a few people, I was reminded that while we're a little fixated on LLMs in the instance gateway, because we think it's both kind of the largest segment of use we see right now, and it has the most opportunity for the instance gateway to do some magic. I did at least want to say, if folks here, and I know we've talked about this with like Kserve, and there's traditional CPU inference, and then there's non-LLM generative AI, and then we anticipate that there's like new types of inference. Like yesterday someone got Doom running on Stable Diffusion in a research paper, which was pretty cool. So the world is changing. If we're a little too fixated on LLM use cases, I do want people to speak up. either say so now, or maybe we should put that in the like a general reminder to ourselves when we do features, is like we should kind of have a principle for the serving work group. Like our charter says serving, accelerated serving, with a little bit of bias towards the novelty of generative AI, but we shouldn't be so fixated on like one specific angle that we don't make sure that the tools and things we work out. So serving catalog, I think, is okay for that. And I think we should write it down in the instance gateway, like as part of the initial project scope and proposal. Like, we are focused on LLMs, but we will support other generative AI use cases down the road.
Yeah, regarding the instance gateway, right? So since it has overlap with model mesh, so we are thinking about maybe eventually that will replace model mesh in the future. So I don't know if it's good to limit the scope to LLM for now. I'd rather to have it like future proof so that we can also leverage it in K-serve.
So, and I think, yeah, like, so this is kind of that, what do you aim for? Do you aim for having like solving one problem and then expanding to the others because you've solved one thing well and people want to start using you? And then there's the, where do you put the future proofness? Do you put it in how you position? I certainly over the years have seen open source projects die a lot of times because their scope is too broad and they don't actually clearly explain what the heck they're solving. So maybe, at least some of the feedback that I've gotten on Instance Gateway is the big thing about LLM traffic right now of transformers is that there's asymmetric, non-uniform output costs, which is a big, anytime you have non-uniformity, you can go do better than random. For some of the generative AI use today, like diffusion, that isn't valuable. But for traditional ML, different models, different model sizes would actually have asymmetry, especially if those traditional ML are running on accelerators. So I think that's actually maybe we want to land with the first use case, but if we have to rename, like in the future, do we want to go back and rename it away from LLM instance gateway or to inference instance gateway? So maybe we should just discuss that in the proposal. Like, we should have a crisp paragraph in the proposal that goes into the repo of who we are serving in the future and when we will serve them. And that should basically, that would be enough input, I think, to settle on a final name.
Yeah, I'm good with the narrow scope to start with so that it can be successful.
And yeah, people did bring up things like another example on the gateway would be LLM. All the modern model servers exploit batching and actually are building much more sophistication around internal batching. So as batching becomes more integrated to the model server, the higher level, anytime you can do batching, you're better off to get better parallelism. A lot of generative AI use cases today are parallelism 1. And so as a consequence of that, there may be asymmetry, but if the accelerator isn't parallel, there's only minimal we can do. That's more of a queuing scheduling problem. That's a little bit of an intersection with batch because, batch is kind of for like really coarse parallelism of jobs. But there's a middle ground that's kind of underexplored, which is if you have a concurrency of 1, but you want to amortize startup, that does feel like that's something that's within Cube's domain. Like, you're using pub sub queues, you're using, a leader worker architecture where you're distributing work. All of those use cases feel like they're in scope for serving because they're about a use case that's online, not batch parallel. So like leveraging batching doesn't mean that you're a batch workload. And maybe we can do some clarification of that in the docs somewhere. So maybe this is just that. So a couple actions for Kellen and myself, and then we get the naming, and Terry, Jan, you'll kind of, if you can record in the proposal, your K-serve would be interested in using the instance gateway, but it wouldn't just be LLMs, and then we can go and crisp up there.
Okay. Yeah, that's just my personal opinion, but I'll discuss with the community and get back to you. All right. Anything else, folks? Okay, we're on time. That's it for today, and have a good day, everyone.